All right. Hey, everybody. So we're looking at our 13.1, 13.2 test review today. Basically, what I'm going to be doing here is just going over the class examples, and then I'll be leaving the rest of this to you. Make sure you're showing work on all of these problems besides this identifying trig ratios time section. You can just do that right on DeltaMath. Everything else, make sure you're showing some work. Okay, so first, let's start with this class example with identifying trig ratios. All right, cool. So yeah, on your paper, first of all, just call this one number one. So you can just put a little number one. And this problem is first, about drawing this triangle correctly, but ultimately they just want the ratio of sides that represents cosine of angle C. Okay, so let's start by drawing this thing. All right, so first thing, I'm just going to draw myself a generic right triangle. Okay, that's a triangle with a right angle. Just a reminder, the trig we've been learning is specifically for right triangles, if you didn't notice that already. Okay, here's the first kind of important thing. They're saying angle D is 90 degrees, okay? Or in other words, this right angle is called D. Okay, the triangle is called BCD. So B and C are the other two angles. It doesn't matter which we name B or C, but I'm just going to make this B and this C. Okay, so now we can get our side lengths onto it. They're saying that DC is 55, CB is 73, and BD is 48. All right, cool. So now let's do what they're asking. Cosine of angle C. Here's angle C, first of all. Okay, quick reminder. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. All right, so taking a look at this. All right, first thing I maybe would notice, the hypotenuse. Remember, that's always across from that right angle. So 73, we're using that. That's the hypotenuse. Okay, what is the leg adjacent to my angle? All right, well, remember, the two short sides are the legs, and the adjacent leg is the one that's touching the angle. So this would be adjacent. All right, another way of identifying it is just realizing that, this is the hypotenuse. 48 is opposite our angle, so we're left with this being adjacent. So if you have trouble with that, just find what method works best for you. Okay, but yeah, adjacent over hypotenuse, 55 over 73. Okay, so this is the work I'm looking for in this section on your piece of paper. When you go to type this in, you can type it in 55 forward dash 73, and it'll turn it into a fraction. Okay, cool. So that's that section. Go ahead and click back, and let's go to the next class example using trig to find a side. All right, cool. So on this, I don't need you to, first of all, draw this triangle. Unless you think it helps you, you can. What I'm really just looking for is you writing out the equation and showing the steps to solving it, all the steps. All right, so yeah, we're finding x, a missing side length. All right, here's the angle that we're given. So first, what trig are we using? Sine, cosine, tangent. Well, we need to figure out what sides we have, right? Looks like we have the side opposite our angle, and we have the hypotenuse across from the right angle. Okay, so opposite hypotenuse, which trig uses that? Looks like sine we need to use. Okay, so let's go ahead and write it out. Sine, remember in this spot goes the measure of the angle that we're using. So by the way, let's call this number 2. Okay, so sine 37 degrees equals opposites over hypotenuse. Be careful with, getting your ratio, your sides in the right spots. Okay, cool. So here's what I'm hoping you're thinking. This is a problem where the variable's on the bottom. I know eventually I'm going to be dividing these numbers to get my answer. Okay, and if you know that, I'm happy you do. I still need to see the work though. All right, and remember the first step is always multiplying by what's in the bottom of our fraction. So let's go ahead and show we're multiplying both sides by x. Okay, those are gone. We have 0.6 on the right. Over on the left, we're just bringing this down. All right, and now we can solve for x by getting rid of sine 37 by dividing both sides. Okay, so please make sure you show me these steps, even if you know how to do it without them. I want to see them, especially on the test, but even on this review. Okay, so here's something interesting. Try to type this in your calculator right here and see what you get. Okay, you should be getting this in your calculator, 0.99. All right, first of all, let's check to see how DeltaMath wants us to round. They're saying round to the nearest tenths. All right, that's how we normally round. That's the one decimal place. All right. Always double check what DeltaMath is asking you to round. Sometimes they change to the hundredths. Sometimes they want a whole number. Okay, but typically, I think it'll say tenths, but double check. So, how does this round? Okay, does the 9 stay a 9 or does it round up? Well, this 9 next to it says it rounds up, right? And that means it turns into a 10, which then turns this and 0 up to a 1. So 1.0 is actually the correct way of rounding that. Okay, so that's kind of a unique thing. We don't normally have a 9 that rounds up, but when it does, it'll round this number up as well. So it's a little weird. Okay, so you have 1.0. You can type that in. All right. Basically, last thing here, this class example using trig to find angles. Go ahead and click on that. All right, cool. So this is obviously we're finding an angle. Maybe first thing to realize in your head, we're shifting from what we're using to these inverse trig ratios. All right, which just basically means we're pressing a different button, but the way we write our equations are a little different. So just remember, we have to kind of switch gears a little bit with the angle stuff. All right, but let's see what we're using here. Here is our angle. I notice we have the side opposite and we have the leg adjacent, which means this is the hypotenuse. So opposite adjacent. What are we using? Looks like we're using tangent. Okay, so this is how I'm going to write it out. First, by naming the angle. All right, on this one, you can call it angle H or you could call it angle X. I wouldn't care either way. I'm going to use H because that's what I normally do. Okay, so that equals, we figured out inverse tangent of opposite over adjacent, 3.9 over 2.2. Okay, and the nice thing about angles, if you remember, there's no solving necessary. We're not multiplying by the denominator like we do when we're finding missing sides. We just need to type this in. Okay, so go ahead and try it out. Inverse tangent. If you don't know how to do inverse tangent or how to type this in, talk to me. Okay, 3.9 divided by 2.2. By the way, make sure you're pressing divided by in your calculator and not the fraction button. I've seen people get errors on some of these problems if they use the fraction button. So just use probably what you do already. Click the divided by button, this one. Okay, so anyway, let's see, we get 60.57. So that 5 is going to round up to a 60.6. Okay, and there it is. You can go ahead and type that in. Okay. Also, I didn't check, but I should have. Do they want actually the nearest tenths? Like I rounded it? Yeah, they do. Okay, but always double check in DeltaMath. Okay. Also, if you are not good at rounding, if you don't know why a 60.57 rounds up, let me just explain it real quick. This is the number we're rounding. It's all dependent on this number next to it, right? If this number is a 5 or more, it rounds this number up. Okay, which it is. It's 7, right? So that's why we're rounding up to a 6. Okay, cool. So yeah, that is the review. That's what the test is going to be like. Last thing I want to point out, when you guys get to this section right here, all right, this is where you're doing more of identifying the ratios of sides and which trig we use. It's going to look like this. And when you press the start button, it's going to pop up a triangle and tell you to do some, trig like cosine of angle A. What is the ratio of sides? And you have multiple choice. All right, one thing to know. They want you to get 8 of these correct consecutively, one after another. All right, on this section, if you miss one, if you're on 7 out of 8 and you miss the next problem, it is going to drop you to 0. All right, so, take your time with it, even though it's timed. I give you a lot of, this is like almost 6 minutes. So don't worry too much about the counting down clock. Worry more about getting these consecutively right. Okay, if you have trouble on this section, talk to me. And also, you might want to save this until the very end because to me, the most important sections are the rest of them, especially using, finding sides and finding angles. Those are the most important sections to know how to do. Okay, so, all right, try these out. let me know if you have any questions, and we'll take the test tomorrow.